It's almost been a week since the opening night of the Super Mario Bros. Movie.
I'ma do my own thing.
Each time.
It's already been a year since the opening night of the Super Mario Bros. Movie.
Hold up. I am not getting copyright claimed by this soundtrack again. Come on, there's gotta be something here I can use. Hold up. No. Oh. Maybe NewSoup's got some. Yeah, that'll work.
It's already been a year since the opening night of the Super Mario Bros. Movie, and I wanted to stop and take a look back at, well, everything this ironically disappointing film has been up to in the past year. Like, for example, do I still think it's as ironically disappointing as I did in my original video? Well, yes, I do. Its writing is still as pathetically one-dimensional as it was the night I first saw it. It still lacks the emotional depth and deeper messaging that can be found in certain illumination in every pre-2020 Disney animated film. And because that hidden complexity is the entire basis of those films' appeal to older audiences, the Mario movie still doesn't really hold any value to those mature audiences who didn't already happen to be fans of Mario in the first place. In which case, they did take the time to tuck references in every nook, cranny, and copyrighted soundtrack this film has to offer. So in conclusion, the Super Mario Bros. Movie is still just a mediocre kids movie that also doubles as a really cool seek and find for anyone born more than 40 years ago. Okay, fine, that's not everything this film got right. It was incredibly true to the source material in ways that make Ugly Sonic spontaneously combust in his grave. And speaking of 3D models, if calling Ugly Sonic a 3D model isn't an insult to everything good and holy about the art, it also had the most realistic and computer-destroying visuals an animated movie had ever attempted at this point. And in an era where every animated movie is trying to draw inspiration from the art style pioneered by Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse, having a more traditionally animated movie that does that tried and true style with its own unique flair is pretty refreshing. But speaking of Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse, Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. Not gonna lie, when I first watched this, I was kinda salty that my favorite non-film franchise didn't get the same movie conversion treatment that Across the Spiderverse did. Even though these two movies are relatively simple in concept, both took a popular character/franchise that wasn't originally a film, converted that universe into something that worked for a film, and completely wiped the floor with Disney's box office earnings. The execution between the two could not have been more different. The creators of Across the Spiderverse embraced their older fans by crafting a narrative that was critically sound. They didn't just rely on references and nostalgic nods to satiate them. They did the obvious. They made sure the movie itself was a satisfying viewer experience. If Nintendo's to continue making film adaptations of their games, and trust me, we'll talk much more about that later, and in the unlikely event that one of their employees happens to be watching this video, here's the one piece of advice that I would like to offer as an amateur filmmaker who you have zero obligation to listen to. Don't limit yourself with your audience. A kid's movie doesn't need to have a plot that everyone can understand 100% of the time. You can spend moments taking your time to tell a better story without worrying about boring the younger audiences. You just made an action movie about the world of Super Mario Bros. For crying out loud. They're not listening to half the dialogue anyway. That's how Pixar's been doing it for as long as the industry's existed. And look where it's gotten them. Okay, enough of that. Let's cut this talk about the movie industry and go back to Mario's roots. In terms of releases alone, this has been a pretty big year for Nintendo. The Switch itself is continuing to rack up sales. Nintendo's released the first mainline Zelda and mainline Mario game since the Switch's launch. They're experimenting with new spin-off titles and are bringing back 2 Mario RPGs that only a year ago I would have guaranteed you were lost to time. And by no means am I saying the Mario movie was directly responsible for all this activity, but I think that film is still linked to them in a critical way. In case you haven't kept up with your world records recently, the Super Mario Bros. Movie is the 3rd highest grossing animated movie of all time. The 3rd highest grossing animated movie of all time. The Mario movie's success has given Nintendo an invaluable reassurance. People still love them. In the modern world of online gaming where everyone dreams of cranking 90s to show their Twitch audiences, the Mario movie's proven that Nintendo and, as a consequence, Mario himself, still have a place in all this. People still want to buy, play, and enjoy his games. If the Mario movie had been a flop, I'm not sure Nintendo would have had such a liberal release schedule this year. From a business perspective, they would have been pretty reluctant to drop all that content in as short a span as they did. And for the record, as a diehard Mario fan, I'm pretty grateful for the way things have panned out. My, wallet might disagree though. Could you really not have announced this a couple months earlier? Alright, we've already wound our way through the past to figure out how we've gotten to the present, but now I want to answer a question that's kind of been the entire purpose of this retrospective. What will we see in the future? What's next in store for the MCU? Not you, you're dead to me. Well, what's confirmed to be next on the agenda isn't part of the Mario Cinematic Universe, at least not yet. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this tweet Shigeru Miyamoto posted late last year, casually informing the world that a Legend of Zelda film is currently in production. I'm sorry, what? No leads, not even any pretense, just, yeah, We're making a Zelda movie. Hope you guys enjoy. On top of that, there's been a much more official and recent announcement that's weirdly kind of flown under the radar, all things considered. Nintendo and Illumination have confirmed that a spin-off to the Super Mario Bros. Movie is also currently in production. It's in its very early stages of development, and nobody's really sure what spin-off exactly it is. But for me, my money's on some sort of Luigi's Mansion spin-off. Not only is Charlie Day, the voice of Luigi in the Mario movie, expressed a ton of interest in being a part of a project like that, but it would also be logical compensation for the relative lack of screen time Luigi got in the original Mario movie. Nintendo fans, it's finally happening. Everything is panning out exactly as we predicted. Like it or not, the Mario movie's commercial success has paved the way for all future Nintendo films to come. Give it a decade or so, and who knows? We may get an Avengers-style crossover based on the greatest crossover fighting game of all time. As someone who's written a Super Smash Bros. Fanfiction myself, the idea of something like this potentially happening is beyond exciting, but also kind of terrifying. Like I said at the start of the video, Nintendo still has a little ways to go before I'll trust them to make the cinematic, multi-dimensional team-up that I've always dreamed of. Alright, fine. As someone who's extremely dedicated to the nuances of film production, I can admit that my expectations are unrealistically high some of the time. Okay, most of the time. Okay, all of the time. But I'm not asking you to recreate the glory of Pixar storytelling in its prime. All I'm asking for is a well-written, cinematically sound, and just satisfying movie. And I know Illumination and Nintendo have the potential to get there. Even if the Mario movie is still as ironically disappointing as ever, I still wouldn't change a thing about it. That's actually a lie. I would change a little bit, but that breaks up this whole emotional ending I'm trying to have here. The future's looking bright, and I'm hopeful that Nintendo will be able to take the feedback generated by their fans and critics and use it to help make their future endeavors as successful as they can be. And I'm not talking about how much bank they bring in. Until next time, this has been Lemon Cake Studios. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.